Can attention affect on non-conscious processing in blind sight? So, can attention affect on non-conscious processing? This question has been asked, and then a large amount of the study says basically yes. And evidence comes from both psychology and neuroscience literature. And it, in the end, excludes a class of models of attention and consciousness. The first thing we are going to talk about is the case of the blind sight. So here's the blind sight, a model of the architecture model proposed by Cowie. And here, important things to notice is that the damage on this V1 areas here, basically missing part of this V1, affects retrograded manner onto the LGN and so on. But the alternative pathway from eyes, from here, to speriocolliculus and the pulvinar, here, this pathway, which goes on to B5 MT, is largely intact for this, blind sight pathway. Okay, and I briefly mentioned this before, but this speriocolliculus and pulvinar is an important area in terms of attention. And so Bob Kentridge, who has been studying this blind sight patient, has come up with the following idea. So blind sight is presumably mediated by the speriocolliculus to pulvinar pathway. And the speriocolliculus is a key area for attention control, both overt eye movements and also covert shift. That's established through neuronal and also patient's work. And then the clever thing he came up with is that is it actually possible for the blind sight patient to pay attention to the invisible object? It was quite kind of weird question at the time, but later on it made sense for many reasons, and that's what I'm going to explain next. So what Kentridge did was the following experiment. It's a combined, detection, discrimination, and also reaction time paradigm, but together with the phenomenological report. So first, the patients are presented with a fixation point, and then they look at the center of the screen. Okay, and then the cue, spatial cue, is going to be presented in the area that a patient cannot see. Okay, and then after some time, there will be auditory tone happening. And then right after that, the stimulus is going to be presented either at the location that is cued by this, invisible stimulus, or presented in other location. And then other trials are 50%, no stimulus situation. And then, so this is a cued detection task, okay? So if the cue is there, and it helps usually processing of the stimulus. And then the instruction to the patient is that there will be target 50% of the time, okay? And then so the rest of the 50%, there will be no target. And that happens after the auditory tone. And then the cue is valid in 33% of the trials, or within the target trials, it's going to be 66%. So what it means is that in 1/3 of the trial, there will be target on the cued location, but there will be no target in 50%, and the rest of the 70% there's a stimulus on the display that patient can see. Okay, a patient cannot see, sorry. And then he's asked to respond to this stimulus as fast as possible, followed by the verbal report of whether it was possible to see or not. Okay, so it's a relatively complicated design of the task, but you need to imagine what the patient is going to feel like. So the first thing, phenomenology-wise, okay, the patient GY never reported seeing the target. So the target contrast was, titrated so that GY doesn't see it, from the previous weeks. I hope that you already understand it, but they don't. He doesn't say that it's never it's visible in any trial. And then the Q itself is also invisible on every block. Okay. And then in terms of discrimination of the location, okay, on the top or bottom, GY was above chance. So it's a 70% correct. And then its localization is correct, regardless of whether the location was cued by the attentional cue. So he has 70% of the correct response for the cued location or uncued location. Either way, okay, and the Q location itself changes. And this is the performance figure, okay? So as a function of the blocks, from left to right, he was tested 10 blocks. And then when the Q was located in the valid location, okay, valid discrimination, he was around, 70% correct, saying that, oh, I saw, that's probably the location of the stimulus, but he denies seeing, okay? And then when the Q was presented in an invalid location, the location of the opposite side of the stimulus, then he's still able to point at, oh, there, but he still denied seeing it, okay? But the interesting thing happened here, okay? The reaction time, which is presented in the y-axis on the left side here of this graph. Okay, y-axis of this figure on the left side is a reaction time that goes from 0 to 1200. Corrector discrimination is on the right side. And then if you look at this, reaction time for the validly cued location, then they are faster. It's around 600 milliseconds here. Okay. On the other hand, if the Q was located in the other location, then his response was slower, right here. So what it means is that in terms of the detection discrimination of the location, in the end, the correct answer was roughly 70%, but the processing was hastened, faster because of the attentional cues. And the important thing is that GY did not notice or not see the cue itself and also the target itself. So all of these things is happening at the attentional benefit, but on the level of the non-conscious cue and non-conscious stimulus, both non-conscious. So in summary, GY, the blindsight patient, denied seeing both attentional cues and targets for detection. And his word is, I just listen for the beep, and then which means auditory tone, and press a button. And the detection performance was above chance. And this means that that part of the effect is a replication of the standard blindsight behaviors. That's not a surprising thing. But bottom-up attention, just a stimulus cue itself, was spatially with withdrawing attention over there, and then facilitate the processing over there. And that resulted in a faster reaction time. And then this is arguably probably the first convincing demonstration of attention without consciousness. And presumably, this is happening through this speria colliculus to pulvinar to MT kind of pathway. And that should happen, in fact, as long as we know that anatomy and also the mechanism of the speria colliculus and pulvinar. And that doesn't generate consciousness, but manipulate attention in some way, this bottom-up manner. So the next question is that whether this is an isolated strange finding, only observable in the blindsight patient. And that's what we are going to address in the next video.